the fear of getting owned, that leads perfectly into the next bit of news that I noticed for today's episode. That is basically a New York Times article that basically is about how basically only Trump supporters are dying of COVID at the moment. And like, listen to this. It says here, since Delta began circulating widely in the U.S., COVID has exacted a horrific death toll on red America. In counties where Donald Trump received at least 70% of the vote, the virus has killed 47 out of every 100,000 people since the end of June.
Jesus Christ.
And like, yeah, like, no, I mean, like, this is about like looking at the data now about how like just a huge gap in vaccination, like more than race, class, gender, like any of those things, is just about who you voted for, or not so much who you voted for, but whether you live in an area that is like super Trump supporting. Because like even in red states, like counties that are less red have higher vaccination rates and less COVID deaths.
Yeah, like the fucking herd immunity thing actually happens.
Yeah, like
the vaccine is a fucking thing that does a thing, you know.
In the article, it talks about how in New England
it doesn't eliminate transmission, but it brings it down rapidly. Like,
I mean, the article points to like New England as an example of like the vaccination rates are so high that herd immunity has effectively been achieved already. And I mean, the thing I want to talk about in this article is that it brings up like sort of as an explanation for why this is the case, which is, you know, it surpasses, it almost like it surpasses like actual politics in a way, and it becomes into the realm of like pure identity politics and culture, but at the expense of like literally, and people are speculating that this might have an impact on the midterm elections in that like the voters that are most wedded to the Republican Party and most motivated to vote against Democrats are self-selecting their own deaths at a astonishingly rapid rate because they don't want to be owned. And the article brings up what I thought was one of the more fascinating and true articles written recently. It's did you see that thing by John Nolte at Breitbart?
Yes,
where he was basically like
that. I got to give him credit for trying to, because he's like realistic enough to know that this is an actual issue, but he knows that he can't just he has to accept the premise. And find a way to jujitsu the resentment to trick these people into getting vaccines. I was impressed.
So like, yeah, John Nolte, like, I mean, his argument is that like he wants Breitbart readers and he wants people like, you know, who, fully imbibe right-wing media and like and you know, he believes the exact same thing that they do. But he's just looked at the statistics and found out that in 2021, 99% of everyone who is currently dying of COVID is unvaccinated. Like you can throw out every other statistic about, how effective is the vaccine? How are there still breakout infections? Or what about the side effects or whatever? It's like if you were in the hospital gasping out your last breath because of COVID, it is totally avoidable. Like this is totally unnecessary, like mass death is what we're talking about here. But he has to find a way to, so like essentially what he says in this article is that all efforts by the Biden administration, public health officials, celebrities to encourage people to get vaccinated are a massive attempt to use reverse psychology to kill as many Trump supporters as possible. And what I love about that is like that kind of literal reverse psychology is only used on and is effective on children exclusively.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm saying, like I'm not saying reverse psychology is a real phenomenon, but that literal thing will just be like, how about you don't eat your vegetables? Like, you know, like, so, I mean, let's see what he says here. In an article this month for Breitbart, the right-wing website formerly run by Steve Bannon, John Nolte argued that partisan gap in vaccination rates was part of a liberal plot. Liberals like Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Anthony Fauci, and Howard Stern, I like that Howard Stern is just thrown in there too, have tried so hard to persuade people to get vaccinated because they know that Republican voters will do the opposite of whatever they say. His argument is certainly bizarre given that Democratic politicians have been imploring all Americans to get vaccinated and many Republican politicians have not. But Nolte did offer a glimpse at a creeping political fear among some Republicans. Right now, a countless number of Trump supporters believe they are owning the left by refusing to take a life-saving vaccine, Nolte wrote. In a country where elections are decided on razor-thin margins, does it not benefit one side if their opponents simply drop dead?
I mean, it's flawless logic, and as a way to try to get these people to still be Breitbart readers in 2 months and not be fucking corpses, it's about as good as you can do with it. But he has to have this frame of the resentment frame of like, you're owning them by getting the vaccine. But he is pointing to a fundamental reality, which is, I don't think that these guys are doing this, that the libs and shit are trying to kill Trump supporters. They're trying to get this relatively over with so we can get back to making money and having people do all the bullshit jobs that they need to do all the time to keep this fucking rickety ass collection of Ponzi schemes called an economy going. But everything they do does get absorbed as the opposite. It is the "don't put salt in your eyes" sketch from Kids in the Hall.
Never put salt in your eyes. Put salt in your eyes. Always put salt in your eyes.
They are radically alienated from all these institutions, from the Democratic Party, from the government broadly construed, from the scientific establishment, from the media establishment, from celebrities. Any one thing that they say, anything that they hear from them, they're going to take as a command, as a demand to submit to their regime, which is and their entire politics are predicated on resisting that. So there is nothing that the libs or people who think they're part of a disinterested political or medical or media establishment can do to convince them. And watching like the way that the anti-vax phenomenon is played out here and abroad too, it really is indicative of how captured all politics is by the parties and by the bases of the two parties, and how, like, no matter what kind of real questions you can have, no matter what kind of like authentic alienation from things like, the medical establishment you might have from living in this country and observing how things work, it can only ever be that feeling, that frustration, that alienation can only ever really end up being funneled into one or another side of a culture war argument. And so when the vaccine comes, no matter how sincere your alienation from medical establishment in this country that has absolutely no interest in seeing anybody get better, just wants to make money, and then all of a sudden show up and say, hey, here's this free vaccine for you. You've never been able to get any medical care your entire life for free. Here's something free for you, and it's for your own good. I think that there's a reason a lot of people feel that, see that, and are suspicious of it. But all they can end up doing is being brought into the draft of a larger movement that has nothing to do with a critique of America's for-profit health system. It is a petty bourgeois temper tantrum by people who have fetishized an idea of their own freedom that is totally narcissistic and also largely fraudulent. Like, they don't have any fucking freedom. We don't have any real fucking freedom in this country, but you can decide not to take the vaccine, and that becomes in your heart the thing that proves that you actually still do have it. And so an entire political movement orients around this single decision that has nothing to do with the efficacy of the vaccine. Nobody fucking knows. You're not a fucking doctor. You're just another asshole like the rest of us. You would not apply the same level of scrutiny, of skepticism to any other medical question if it didn't have all of this political shit wrapped up in it and all of the partisan shit wrapped up into it. And so all of the real alienation from America's criminal institutions of capital exploitation can only end up being manifested as being a junior partner of a movement of just giant fucking babies who are demanding the right to just get to own the libs by choking to death.
Yeah, it's a bad joke that, like, the measure of your sort of that you are unbowed, unbent, unbroken is the extent to which you are willing to risk needlessly suffering and dying. And I must stress the needless part of all of this.
No, yeah, I think like some of the shit, like the radio host stuff, is morbidly funny, but I really don't want anyone to die from this, regardless of. I think many of them do want to die. I think that's an underrated part of American life, just wanting to fucking die. But morbidly funny. I find it morbidly funny when like one fat 6-year-old's friend will die and he'll be like, oh, well, like he was fat. He never exercised. And the guy saying that's also like incredibly fat.
Yeah.
Bad health, like has diabetes. It is. No, it's amazing. Like you can, after that, there's nothing you can do. If like like 4 of your friends die and they have the exact same health profile as you and also didn't get the vaccine, and you're like, oh, that's like he didn't. I did jumping jacks in 2000.
I'm different though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how Americans put up with all this shit. Is that they always think that that they are going to be spared the worst that America can dish out because they're different.
Yeah.
And at the end of this, the Times article about it, I mean, it does get into this idea of like, how might more conservative Americans be persuaded to get vaccinated? And it says, one intriguing anecdote involves the football team at the University of Mississippi, which is entirely vaccinated, even though the state has one of the lowest vaccination rates. Coaches there emphasize the tangible, short-term costs of getting COVID rather than the more remote chance of death. The players might have to miss a game, and the team might have to forfeit it if they tested positive. A related message is duty. Timothy Carney has written in the Washington Examiner, if Carney had refused to get vaccinated, he explained, he would have risked loading more work onto his wife, his colleagues, and his partner in teaching Sunday school, as well as forced children to miss school. And then it goes here, in The Atlantic, Olga Kazan has argued that fear remains the best motivation based on her interviews with Tucker Carlson viewers who nonetheless have been vaccinated. And Daniel Darling, an evangelical author, has said that one-on-one conversations encouraging conservatives to talk with their doctors will have more success than any top-down campaign. Ready for the turn?
Almost no one in this country has a doctor. I'm sorry, man.
Ready for the turn, though? Then again, Darling's message also shows why the vaccination gap exists in the first place. After he wrote an op-ed in USA Today about his decision to get vaccinated, Darling's employer, NRB, an association of Christian broadcasters, fired him.